What do I need to renew my business license? We're going to answer that great question in this video. Okay, let's rock. Let's talk about that. So we're talking about renewing a business license. So that would mean that you already have one. If you're going to renew a business license, you need to check with your local jurisdiction, your city clerk's office, the city treasurer. It could be even as simple as calling City Hall and having them transfer you to the division that's in charge of licensing and permits. That's usually the ones in charge of renewing. Now, in this day and age, 2020, most of the stuff can be done online, which is awesome. At the bare minimum, you can download the forms online so you can have everything ready. And most of what you're going to need is going to be listed on that form. But sometimes they're not. So I'm going to explain a couple situations, a couple different businesses that I've got that, play completely differently as far as renewing a license go, depending on the city. I mean, they're just simply two cities. I'm here in the Kansas City area, in the greater Kansas City area. So we're going to talk about my trading card store in the city of Lenexa, Kansas. And we're going to talk about my We Buy Gold store that's in Kansas City, Missouri. Okay. So two different businesses in two different cities and states with two different licenses. Okay. So here we're going to go with the first one, the trading card business. So when I renew that business license every single year, it's very simple. They usually just send me a renewal notice. Hey, this is coming up for renewal. And it usually just has an invoice. And you can go online, you can pay it online, or you can take it physically to the city and take a check and just pay it. And they just issue you a new certificate, a new license. And that's it. I love those cities. They make it super simple. Now, initially when we set it up, there was a lot more information that we needed. As you all know, we needed, at the time, if I remember correctly, like our EIN number. It might have even asked for like our Kansas entity business number, which you get from the Secretary of State's office. There's you've got an actual ID in the state of Kansas. I think they asked for that as well. I don't think they asked for revenue in that one or number of employees or anything like that. But there was your basic stuff, your name, your address. I think they might have even asked potentially like what alarm company we're using or something like that. They listed quite a bit of things, but it was fairly simple. Now, switching over to the We Buy Gold business in Kansas City, Missouri. So Kansas City, Missouri is a lot more extensive. There's just a lot more that goes into it. And the biggest thing is they do ask you for your prior year's gross sales, and they actually charge you based off of your sales. So unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, the more money you make, the more sales that you have, the more money you're going to pay for your business license. I don't like those. I think they should just charge a flat fee. That's my 2 cents. I mean, you shouldn't punish the guys just because they're setting up a better business that makes more money, but who knows? Most business licenses, depending on the city that you're in or the jurisdiction, the county, whatever, they can range probably as low as like $50 or $100, somewhere in that range. But some of them could be hundreds and some could be thousands of dollars, depending on, again, what the criteria is. So back to Kansas City, Missouri. So they want your prior year's numbers, right? They want your gross revenue. And then you fill out, like on the online form, there's an actual form, if I remember correctly, I think it's called like RD 105 or something like that. So I go in there and I Google it, and sure enough, there it is. It's something that I can print out. And then I print it out, and at the top of it, it's got my basic information. So I have like my company name, my address, my phone number, and then it asks for like my Missouri, it's like the Missouri entity number. I forget the actual exact phrase, but there's a number that's registered with Missouri, and then it asks me for my EIN number, and then that's when all the numbers start. So then they want to know, okay, what was the prior year sales, and I think it's maybe the projected year or something like that, and that falls into the category of, so after you list those numbers, it's going to fall into the category of like this spreadsheet where they've got, okay, if you've done this much to this much in sales, you owe this much for your license. This much to this much, you owe this much. So it's based off of this range, and that dictates exactly how much money you're going to owe for your business license. So there's actually more to it depending on the industry that you're in. So like in that particular business with We Buy Gold, we're in precious metals. So, we've got our precious metals. We've got the ability to get that. We've got our business license for the prior years. So in precious metals, they require that we actually have a bond. So the bond is simply like an insurance policy is kind of what it is, but it's built for the city. And so the city requires that we actually have a bond. which means a small little tiny insurance company of like $5,000, it's like $5,000 bond, which probably costs us, I'm gonna guess, $200 or $300 every couple years or something like that. And so we have to have that in order to actually get the license. So the reason I'm telling you about this story is because it might apply to your business. When you're asking, what do I need to renew it? In my particular case with the We Buy Gold business, I have to have a bond in addition to all the basics, in addition to my revenue, my sales figures, my personal information, my business information, my mailing address, all that. In addition to all of that, I actually have to have a bond, and it will hamper my ability to renew the license. And you don't want that. Believe me, you don't want to let your license expire, because in some cities and some jurisdictions, you could have to start all over again, where they just make you start from scratch, which is not fun. There could be penalties and interest that you have to pay for not having it. And then worst comes to worst, you might have some enforcement officer that actually shows up at your business and close it down and say, hey, you're not licensed in this business. You didn't renew in time. So unfortunately, we're not gonna let you do that. The good news is that most cities and most counties or states or whatever give you a grace period. So like if you expire, say on the 31st of December every single year, they know that it takes time to gather your sales and stuff like that if it's one of those cities that's doing that. So they'll give you time. They might give you 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. They're not going to just send the enforcement officer out on New Year's Day and say, hey, you didn't renew in time or whatever. And most people know that that's the holidays anyway, so most people aren't working. But it's important to understand that you don't want to let it expire. So if it does expire, call in advance. Like we talk about planning our landings, right? Planning ahead in business. So if you know your license is going to expire December 31st, call your local city, your local state, whatever that's in charge of issuing these business licenses. Call them and say, hey, how much of a grace period do I have? My license expires on December 31st. So do I have like an extra 30 days or 60 days to gather my sales figures or whatever? And they're probably going to tell you yes. And if that's the case, wonderful. But again, get in there. Make sure that you're in there, renewing as soon as possible, because if you run into a hiccup where they're like, oh, you need a bond or you need something else, maybe you need an additional permit or, something, gets renewed every 3 years and yours expired. And so now you have to go get that bond or whatever I was talking about. You've got that, all lined up, because theoretically, if you're having to get that through your insurance agent, that might delay 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on how quickly your insurance agent moves, right? So there's a lot of various things you might need to get that. The easiest way is to call the city and ask them for like a checklist, a hit list, and say, hey, what are all the things that I'm going to need to renew? And they're going to give you. So the short answer is, what do you need to renew a business license? It's going to depend on your city. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like it. Please comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. And please don't forget to subscribe. I'd love to keep delivering you videos. And remember, in business, no matter how hard it gets, never quit, push hard, and be the hustler.